Well, hey guys, welcome to today's video. Today we are going to dive into a topic that I think will be helpful to you today, and that is I want to share some things with you that I wish I knew when I started my nursery. Either so I would know how to do something that I didn't know to do, or if it's just one of those things where, oh, I didn't see that coming, or it's, oh, I may have felt a little bit better about this situation or that situation if I had known that ahead of time. So I want to share some of this with you guys today, and I hope it's helpful. So let's dive in. Now, these things are in no particular order, so just have that in mind as we go. But first thing I want to share with you that is an invaluable tip, I think, and that is that when it comes to growing plants that you're planning on selling, that is that variety is king. Now, what do I mean by that? So if you guys are familiar with our channel, if you've been watching us for any time at all, you know that I grow a lot of just a few plants. Well, that has served me okay. Through the years of kind of learning how to do nursery, we have learned how to propagate really well plants like these green giant arborvitas and several varieties of hydrangeas and some edibles and some perennials and a few things that we've gotten pretty good at doing. But as time has gone on, I've realized that we really do have a lot of eggs in just a very few baskets. Now, it's okay to have a lot of eggs in a few baskets, but what I really want to do is have a whole lot of baskets. So what do I mean by that? I want more varieties of virtually anything I can think of, more varieties of shrubs. So we've always got a couple of shrubs. We've almost always got some boxwoods and some hollies of some sort. Well, we want to have loropetalums, and we want to have gardenias, and we want to have some gold mops, and just a number of varieties of shrubs. We want to do the same thing with perennials. We've done great through the years with hostas. They're easy to propagate, which, you know, that puts them in a different category for me of being a great plant. We've done really well with hostas, but we want to make sure that we've always got blanket flowers and veronicas and black-eyed Susans and coral bells and lamiums and just all sorts of varieties of perennial. Same thing with our trees that we've offered for sale. We want to have a good variety of trees. We want to have a good variety at different seasons of various edible plants. And the reason I've kind of come to this conclusion is that very, very often at our nursery, particularly on those busy days in the spring, people load up their carts, they load up their buggies with perennials, our staple $8 perennials. And over they ask, do you have any of this plant? And if they didn't already find it, I probably don't have it. And it seems like they're always asking for some variety of perennial that I don't have. Now, I realize that I can't have every plant, and I'm just going to always have to tell people no about some things for sure. Any nursery would be that way. People want a very wide variety of things, and you can't be all things to all people in the plant world. It's just not possible. But when you're thinking about starting a nursery, think about variety. If I were going to buy 100 plants to start my nursery with today, I would probably buy 10 varieties of 10 perennials. I don't know exactly how I would go about doing that, but it's just an example or an idea of how I would go about starting. I would go variety over I would go going all in on one plant. There are plants you can go all in with, but I think that it's always going to be easier and probably better for your nursery to remember that variety is king. The second thing that I wish I knew when I started, it would have helped me with a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear and a lot of worry, and that is that selling plants is actually easier than I thought. And you know, I've told somebody before just in conversation and passing about what do you want to do when you grow up and, you know, those kinds of conversations when you're much younger. I told somebody before that if I had to sell something for a living, then my family would be hungry in a week. And that's really kind of ironic given that I sell plants for a living and grow them in my own nursery now. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But when I think of selling something, I think of salesmen, like having to make calls and convince somebody to buy something from me. Oftentimes that they are reluctant to buy. You know, I think of the stereotypical bad used car salesman when I think of selling something, but the nursery is really not that way at all. Actually, I don't really sell anything as far as me having to push my product and try to convince somebody that they can't live without it. So what I've learned is that online advertising is the only way to go. As you guys are probably well aware, Our location is out in the country, and we have very little traffic come by here on a day-to-day basis, except just residents that live right here. And all of my advertising not only do I do it online, but even more specific than that, I do it all on Facebook and only on Facebook. I'm not saying that's all I should be doing. At least right now, it's all I am doing, and it's all that I need to be doing because it works well enough to get as many people here as we can get. So in the world of advertising, particularly on a platform like Facebook, you often see that you should expect to get a 3-to-1 or a 5-to-1 or a 7-to-1 return on your advertising dollars. And using Facebook as my advertising platform, I routinely get 20-to-1 on my advertising dollars as on my return on investment. So 20-to-1 is strong, and it's oftentimes higher than that on certain weeks. So it's one of those things where you just need to let people know what you're selling, and you do that by writing a compelling ad and using good pictures in your ad and being very honest, very truthful, and being unique in some way in the ad copy that you write. And when that gets blasted out to the world and people are scrolling through it, they stop on it, click on it, and they say, hey, let's go check this place out. And we can get as many people in here as we need right now. And our big limitation so far has been our inventory. We don't have as many plants to sell as we would like to sell. So that's really our main objective in the next year, is increasing our production. It's not, can we figure out how to sell the plants we have? If you let people know what you got, the plants will sell themselves. So something that's worth mentioning is learning how to use online advertising. It is the best advertising that's ever been invented in human history. You can get it in front of the most eyeballs for the cheapest amount of money, and it actually makes selling plants really, really easy. So that being said, you can absolutely sell your plants if you learn how to work an online advertising media, specifically on social media like Facebook. It is absolutely can't miss. Now, third thing that I wish I knew when I started out that I think will be encouraging to you if you're just beginning to think about your nursery especially, and that is this, and it's really important to know this, it's very comforting to know this, and that is your expenses, your business expenses, they greatly decrease after you get all your primary infrastructure in place. Now, there are just certain things in your nursery that are going to cost money, and there's no way around that. You got to build some kind of irrigation infrastructure. That may be as simple as a garden hose and a sprinkler, but you still got to do it. You got to have some kind of ground cloth. You guys know that we use this ground cover. You can see it black behind me. We use this for every plant that we have out here. It's sitting on this ground cover of some kind somewhere. You got to build more than likely some kind of shade structures or plastic covers. Depending on what you're growing in your climate, you may or may not need that, but really I'm speaking more to a southern climate when I say that. But you got to acquire your stock plants, like your inventory. Then you can't just pop them out of nothing. You have to get your original plants from somewhere. Even if your intention is to primarily propagate all of your own plants, you still got to get seed. You got to get seed trays. You got to get infrastructure set up for propagation, and that can be really simple or it can be really elaborate, and that just totally depends on what your long-term goals are. But there are just certain things that you have to do to get started, and sometimes it just feels like it's thing after thing after thing after thing that you just wind up buying, and you just, oh, I didn't realize these pots would be as expensive as they are, or I didn't realize that fertilizer might cost as much as it does, or I didn't know I was going to need so much of it, or it's just there's always this next thing that it seems like you're having to put money in, especially in the beginning. But the great thing is that once you get a lot of that stuff in place, you don't have to go back and redo it over and over and over and over again. So for us, we brought a bunch of gravel in to build our gravel parking lot, which cost us $20,000 to do that. And, we spent $1,000 at least on this black ground cover, covering, I don't know how many tens of thousands of square feet we've got covered now. And we built the wooden hut in the back, and we've got all kinds of shade structures out here that we use because we're in a hot climate and we need a little bit of shade protection, particularly in the summertime. And, just acquiring all the pots and mounds and yards of potting soil, it takes money to do all of that. But there's virtually no business you're ever going to be able to get into where you can just get into it for free. But once you get this stuff in place, your expenses level off greatly. Won't have to be spending money on the parking lot again. Won't have to be spending money on this ground cover again for years. Our shade structures are in place. If we want to expand, we can expand, but it's not necessary to the functioning of our business as we are right now. Now we're propagating more of our own plants than we ever have, so there's fewer of those to have to buy in on an ongoing basis. So Just saying all that to say you may feel like, oh man, we're never gonna quit spending gobs and gobs of money trying to get this nursery going. Give it time, get yourself going, learn the process of growing and selling plants and get really good at that in a very small space, and those expenses are going to level out as you go. They're not ever going to go to zero. You've always got to have materials and supplies. I mean, it always will cost you at least some money to make money, so don't think that I'm saying that. But in the very beginning, the numbers are just a lot higher on the expense side. So it's something to be aware of, but those will go down with time. A fourth thing that I wish I knew before I started my nursery, and that is that I was going to have to learn to be adaptable. Now, again, as y'all know, I started out just propagating a few plants, just trying to learn how to grow a few plants. And I mean, I think that's where anybody should start out. You can't just start out doing everything all at once. But, you know, it never really dawned on me that I was ever going to be doing this on the scale that I'm doing it on now, and aspiring to do it on an even larger scale. And that there were different directions I was going to need to go. Like, I can't just be a hosta nursery. As much as I would love to, I can't figure out how to sell 10,000 hostas a year. I just can't do it. Or 20,000 hostas a year. I just can't not figure out how to do that. And I don't really want to do that. And I can't just do arborvitaes, and I can't just do hydrangeas. So what we've began expanding into is learning about other plants and how to grow them. So this year we really got into doing annuals, and we sold thousands and thousands of annuals this year for the first time ever. We had a few last year, didn't really know what to do with them. And this year we did really well with them. Now, we bought all those in and just kind of did a quick flip on them. We didn't make a ton of money on them, but we did take some of them and pot them up and grow them out into bigger pots. You know, bought them for 90 cents and sold them for $6 in about 8 weeks, and did really well with some of them. So it's one of those things that we're going to constantly be learning new plants and new propagation techniques. This year I'm going to try to start propagating perennials from seed. I've never done that in any meaningful numbers at all, other than just dabbling here or there. I mean, at all. So looking forward to trying that. You know, we've expanded into selling our plants as starter plants online through Nursery U and through our YouTube channel. So we got to figure out how that's going to look going forward, and how do we want to divide our time and our effort and our energies on selling plants online versus selling them here from our place to the public. And it's just one of those things where it's apparent that there's opportunity everywhere. We are just trying to figure out how to capitalize on it the best. You know, I never thought that I'd have 300 blueberry plants. Well, I've got 300 that are coming in January this year, and I think I can sell them before the weather even warms up. Well, I never even thought that was a thing, but you got to keep your eyes open for opportunities, even into areas of nursery and plants that you don't really know that much about. Just be willing to learn, be willing to try something different, be willing to try something new. Just know that you are capable of way more than you think you are. There's nothing about the nursery that's overly complicated. So making those changes and learning those new things, and some plant that you are totally in love with and you're convinced that everybody else should be in love with it too, and you figure out you just can't sell it, well, you're going to have to pivot and try something different. So I guess what I'm saying is just have open eyes, have an open mind, and constantly be working on new ways to expand your inventory, expand your abilities at growing and propagating. And always, I think if I did this for 100 years, I would always still be trying to learn new ways to sharpen things, to make things better and more efficient and cheaper, and all of the rest. So you got to be adaptable. Now, a final thing that I'll share for this video is that I've learned, and it's none of those things, there's really no way around it, but that is that finding your nursery stock can prove to be challenging. Now, I will say this, it's not as challenging as some people make it want to seem. There's something kind of funny about the nursery industry, and I don't really understand exactly what it is, and I can't exactly put my finger on it, but there are some nurseries, particularly wholesale nurseries, that don't advertise at all, and it's almost as if they're trying to hide from you. I mean, and I mean that literally. There's no website presence. You can't find a phone number for anybody. I'm not saying that that's bad or anything like that, because they're obviously doing business in some way that works for them. Maybe it's that they have everything sold way before they ever even grow it to landscapers and municipalities, and who knows who's buying their plants from them. But that being said, sometimes nursery stock can be hard to find. But if you will Google search, you can find all sorts of things very simply just by doing some searching. I mean, I could Google search right now and find 10 wholesale nurseries to buy plants from online and have plants shipped to me. Might not be the exact plants that I want, might not be the price exactly that I want, but it might be. It might be both of those things, and you just have to be flexible. Like I previously mentioned, you cannot just have your heart set on, okay, I'm starting my nursery with this plant and this plant only. Well, if you've got a way to acquire that plant in meaningful numbers for a good price, then I guess that's okay. But you have to go with what you can find. This is some of the stuff we talk about in nursery. You helping each other locate plants all the time. And that's one of those things that's valuable about being in a community of people who are doing the same thing you're doing, is sharing ideas and sharing sources with each other. So I guess what I'm saying is, don't let yourself get frustrated or throw your hands up in the air and just quit because you can't find your first starter plants. If that's the biggest problem that you have in starting a nursery, is finding starter plants, then you are not cut out for this business. You got to be resilient. You got to be persistent. You got to be willing to grind it out a little bit when things are hard. Make phone calls, ask questions, join Facebook groups or whatever discussion groups or websites or whatever it is. Be willing to put in the time and effort to do the work yourself, to find the plants that you really want to grow and that you really want to sell. They're out there to be found. I can't always find every single plant that I want, but I can always find something. So try not to let yourself get discouraged if you're having a hard time finding some plants. Just get started. Call some nurseries. Find out where they get their stuff. They may tell you, they may not, but it does not hurt to make a phone call. So hopefully that's encouraging to you in some way, just to know that you absolutely can find your plants. How do I know that? I found mine. If I can do it, anybody can do it. If there are things that I can share with y'all that give you some peace about starting on this journey into the world of nursery, or give you some tips or some very practical hands-on things, that's exactly what I want this channel to be for. So hopefully you found something in this today that lightens your load in some way as you begin to pursue starting a nursery business of your own. Well, guys, I appreciate y'all watching. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all on the next one.